I think the institution of the family is the foundation of modern civilization. I think we know who men and women are based on their chromosomal inheritance. And I think the idea that you would try to undermine that subtle understanding in human culture is pernicious in the extreme. And I think the idea that that project of undermining that subtle understanding within human culture, the fact that it could go without being criticized within the academy in a systematic way, without seeing it for what it is in the long-term historical context, that terrifies me. That's a kind of corruption of our intellectual life.
A lot of your book in Late Admissions is about sort of the combination of the personal and the political. And that's really a fascinating thing that nobody else has done. It's an audacious book in the sense that you really sort of bury your soul in the book. And so, can you talk a little bit about what you think that relationship is? Because those of us who are in the realm of ideas, and do it professionally, we like to think that the thing that's driving us is the ideas, it's the thoughts, it's the philosophy. But in your book, you make very clear that that's not always the case. How should we think about politics and philosophy in sort of a more realistic sense, in terms of how does that cross streams with just life and how we actually live?
Gosh, I don't know if I have anything of general importance to say about that. I mean, I could only be anecdotal. I could only kind of talk about my own experience. And, I was on the right, then I moved left, and I moved right again. And I've talked about that a little bit already here with you. I used to be a technical, theoretical economist, an academic in the purest sense of the word, who wrote abstract mathematical modeling type economic theory papers for the academic journals and talked to 500 people around the world about those papers. And that was my life and my graduate students. And I got a job at Harvard, a young, talented Black economist. I was the first Black to have tenure in the economics department at Harvard in 1982, and had the anticipation that I was going to go on in that vein as an academic theorist, but I had a crisis of confidence. The ideas weren't coming. I wondered if I was good enough. Maybe I had a little imposter syndrome. Maybe there was this affirmative action kind of boomerang thing that happens when, you move somebody along so fast and whatever. But the bottom line is, I kind of lost confidence in my ability to succeed in that kind of work at Harvard. And I moved over to the Kennedy School of Government and became a more applied, policy-oriented political economist. And the race issue was rife. It was something that I had worked on in my thesis, something that I had an interest in as an African-American. And so I became what fully developed as a Black conservative social critic of the neoconservative stripe in the 1980s. So how does that relate politics and personal? In a way, I became more political because of a personal professional crisis that I was having, which relates to politics in a way because it's linked to affirmative action and the fact that I was brought in self-consciously as an African-American to take that position at Harvard, and that influenced the way that I handled those responsibilities or failed to handle them, as the case may be. And we've already talked about how I broke with some of my friends on the right, like Dinesh D'Souza and Abigail and Stephen Thernstrom and Charles Murray, about what was going on in the 90s and about how that had also personal connections for me, because my identity, longing to come home again and to be embraced, caused me to, I think, be more antagonistic to some of my conservative compatriots than I otherwise might have been. When I get asked a question about how my personal life should affect my politics, I want to try to advocate for staying true to the sense of the intellectual framework that you're committed to, and not being pulled by the tug of war that goes on with popularity, audience capture, appealing to other people, going along to get along. Even if you're cutting against the grain, stay true to what you think is the actual right thing. I mean, that's kind of the lesson that I draw from my various vacillations. I've ended up back on the right, and I think I was right all along to be on the right. I mean, I think the institution of the family is the foundation of modern civilization. I think we know who men and women are based on their chromosomal inheritance. And I think the idea that you would try to undermine that subtle understanding in human culture is pernicious in the extreme. And I think the idea that that project of undermining that subtle understanding within human culture, the fact that it could go without being criticized within the academy in a systematic way without seeing it for what it is in the long-term historical context, that terrifies me. That's a kind of corruption of our intellectual life, stuff like that. Anyway, I know I digress a little bit, but I mean, I was right in my conservative instincts all along, and I regret that I strayed from them in order to curry favor with my co-racialists.